the money's always coming in. And we just keep an eye on it so we know that the numbers, but otherwise it just goes into free cash.
So-
Does this make sense to people?
So if we look at the budget here, is it here or is it
No,
separate from?
No,
okay.
it's totally separate, but if you look at last year's budget compared to last year's, because I don't have, but on last year's, I'm looking at upside down. See the 9,000?
Yep,
And see the, no,
2,000 for gas.
the 2,000, so it's 11,000 last year. Well, we're already in the hole on the wages right now. So we talked to Nanachka and Brian, decided we're just gonna run it negative till the end of the year, and then what we have left in our budget, we'll throw in, and then you guys can throw in the rest, because the money's sitting in free cash. It's not that you're down any money. Now, so that's the gasoline and the wages, so I'm pulling those out and putting those in a revolving account, so they're,
Question from our
So
town accountant.
so just conversely, that money is also coming out of local receipts though.
yeah,
So just
it's all a
be
wash.
aware.
Yeah, we pay it, they pay us back, so it's a wash. The only thing that isn't a wash is they also pay us a small amount of money each week or each pay period for dispatching. Well, with Lisa and Heather doing the dispatching, we're already paying them to do their job. Dispatching is like just a little extra gravy, what I call gravy money. But that runs about $2,500 a year, which is extra money we get in that doesn't,
That should go into local receipts, right?
well, it does. The money comes into the town, but I
Right.
just want you aware that not only we're making a little money going on, which is, to me, offsetting some of the things. The other thing we have is a state grant. Now, the state grant is based on the number of seniors every 10 years, because it's based on the federal census. So right now, our federal grant is like, it says that we have 723 seniors back in 2010. And so we get, I forget whether it's $12 a senior. And we just go to say, so they're gonna give us $9,800 a year right now for that. And we can take anything out of the budget and put it into that grant, so it lowers the amount we're asking you for. So this year, we're gonna be taking, out of this total bundle that you have here, we're gonna take about 6,700, nearly 6,800 out that'll fall into the grant. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So, we're not really spending that much. It has to be done this way.
Yep.
But the reality is,
so with the reimbursement.
So you're not gonna spend this money?
no, we are
So why
gonna
are we
spend it.
budgeting for it then if we're not?
Because we don't know what exactly, Well,
So in the,
we
in
could
the,
probably change that, but I
but
was,
in the way that the MARC reimbursement is 100% guaranteed, it
Yeah.
seems like this grant stuff is a little
well,
bit,
I'm never sure about the state.
yeah.
So I think I'd like to leave it out, but next year we could investigate not.
I guess I'd wanna know what the turnbacks were. You know what I mean? So they should be, in theory, should be what you're putting into the grant, right?
Right, the 9,000.
So if there aren't a lot of turnbacks, then that's not working. So I don't know, I just don't know what that
Let's
is.
track it for this year, and then maybe next year we may take it out into another revolving fund, if you want. I'm happy to do it any way you guys wanna do it.
Does the revolving fund require a vote of the town?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why there's an article that,
So there is gonna be, okay,
they've already written the article.
okay.
Yeah, it just says, but we're
That's
knocking
fine.
it out.
I was not
No,
aware of that.
I'm
Okay.
not, no, this is a good question, but last year it was 11,000, because we're already in the hole for labor and probably for gasoline pretty soon. We're gonna knock it up to 16,000, because that's what, it's totally based on the use of the van, the drivers and how far they drive.
And I understand your reasoning for putting a second pile of money in a revolving fund. It's not clear to me why you need a second revolving fund.
Well, I'm not sure of it either, we have to sort of talk that one through, and I need to go back and look at
But
the,
that's a decision
requirements
for
and-
next year.
requirements of the grant.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the time being, I think we should leave it as it is, but we'll definitely look at that. Okay, so what we have, the two things we have done, right now Heather has been working 30 hours a week.
Just for the benefit of the public, can you remind us what
Okay.
those positions are?
Okay, Heather is our outreach worker for 20 hours and our program director for 10, which adds up to 30 hours. Lisa is our director of the whole shooting match. Because with the change in personnel and the qualifications of the change in personnel, Lisa, who was originally, a few years ago, the outreach worker and then left and came back, they're doing more sharing of the responsibilities. But no matter what, Lisa presently is working about 30 hours a week. The town is paying her for 20. She will probably continue to do that because that's Lisa. But I thought it would be nice to try to increase her hours a little bit, and realizing the budget's really tight. And because of it's a little confusing, but because of the mix under last year between Lisa's salary and Heather's salary, we had a blended rate, and because of the blended rate, we were able to the blended rate went down because Lisa's salary was rate was higher than Heather's. So when Heather took the whole thing over, it decreased a bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So I ran the numbers a number of ways and thought if we could increase Lisa's hours by 4 hours this year, that would put her at 24 and Heather at 30. At least it's a step towards the amount of hours she's putting in. Okay? And as for all the other stuff, it's pretty much what we did last year. The software support, we paid for
My senior center.
My Senior Center software, it's a standard thing. I plugged in a 5% increase in the lease because that's what they've been coming up with. I can't tell you what it's gonna be. But I thought, and I also plugged in 10% for the cable because the cable seems to jump more than anything else. And if we don't spend it, it comes back to you guys, but I didn't really wanna under budget. But other than that, it's pretty much the same.
And remind us again, what is in the purchase of services?
The purchase of services is,
That's our painting class and program supplies, transportation for bus trips.
Oh,
things
so like
that.
any programs and activities?
yeah,
So I'm guessing purchase of services and supplies provide money that would support both of
Right,
those.
so the supplies would be, all of our office supplies, the refreshments, the
Food.
food, yeah.
yeah, so,
So the services, if it needs supplies, goes in the purchase of services.
yeah, the biggest things in purchase of services are are things like, you can see on, you don't have this. It makes up, we've got $3,000 in for bus trips, for 4 bus trips, 5 bus trips. Painting class, reflexology. Does anyone know, everybody know what reflexology is? Okay. Fitness class, the senior luncheon, and the program coordinator expenses. And that's what the $8,050 adds up to. And it's $50 more than last year. So we really tried to keep it level. The software is pretty much the same. The lease is, as I said, increased 5%. Telephone's the same. Cable is, I increased, and the supplies are the same. Now, the one thing to be aware of is that right now, we're functioning on this number from the state for our grant of 783, whatever the number is. When they fill out the census this year, we expect it to go to 1,300. Well, 700 times 12. Now, there's no guarantee the state will reimburse at the same rate, but I can't imagine going down. So even if it stays the same, we go from 700 to 1,300. We're going to pick up more money in the grant, which means we can help the budget. But they don't report that until the middle of December next year. So it won't affect this budget, it'll affect the 2021 budget. Does that make sense to you? I thought maybe they could come out of it quicker, but after seeing some shenanigans.
It'll affect the 22 budget.
Yeah.
The 22, but, you're right,
Won't
it is
affect the 21 budget.
21 is what we're.
yeah, we're in 21 now, 22 budget. But, so there's light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. Now, that's the answer, those are my going over the budget. Now I want to turn over to Lisa, so she,
You said you were keeping, the budget I have has you taking van drivers and gasoline out of the budget,
that goes into the revolving fund.
but you don't have the revolving fund yet. It's
No,
gotta
but
be-
we have a piece of paper that does it.
Okay,
What happens if
Extremely unlikely,
That doesn't pass?
yes.
It goes back in the budget and you still get the money in the bank, so it really,
We can't change, we can't raise the budget on the floor.
That's true.
I don't know what we do. That's a conundrum. I can't believe that I can't talk the town meeting into approving an article.
No, no,
No,
no.
his point is,
You can't
there's an
increase.
outside chance.
No, and there's an outside chance that they'll turn me down.
Right.
But,
I'd
you
be
know,
shocked.
I'd be shocked, but.
I'd be
I'd
shocked.
be shocked too.
Yes,
But
you
you
never
have to
know.
look at,
You have
yeah.
to
Oh,
look
no,
at
have
no,
a
I think
plan
Bob's
B.
got a, yeah, and I don't know
Plan
what we
B.
do for Plan B.
So the answer is you put money in the budget and then take it out at the town meeting.
Right.
We could do that. You wanna do that? Do you wanna do that?
Well,
That
the
makes
budget,
more
the
That's pretty
budget,
The budget's
convoluted.
voted for
the budget
first.
goes
Yeah, I was
first.
gonna
Yeah,
ask
the
about
budget goes first.
Which is always.
So, you know, if I can't talk the town meeting into this, I've lost my touch.
I know, but there's a lot of people in town depending on you keeping your touch. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
want to
no, I
make sure we
agree.
deliver the service.
I don't know, we'll have to think about it. I haven't thought about that. You know, I just thought it's just an obvious thing.
Yeah, I don't think.
I agree, and
What's the
every other
downside of
revolving fund.
adding it and then amending the budget down?
You
Not
can't do that after the
no.
budget's
The
passed.
budget
Yeah.
approved.
You
Once
don't wanna
they,
reverse
they approve the budget
It's
before they get to
Article
the
one.
article.
The money-
It's Article
Yeah,
one
you
or
don't
two.
want to reopen
Yeah.
the budget.
Huh?
You don't want to reopen the
No.
budget.
No, you don't.
Um,
So,
You know, the thing is, there's already at least one other revolving fund that's on the warrant. And there may be a second revolving fund, if I remember earlier meetings from here, that's been discussed.
Is the one that you're thinking of that's already on it, the software one, that the,
The software one's already on there.
yeah,
There's gonna be one for ALS.
right, yeah.
And I thought there was discussion of another revolving fund being created several weeks ago in this meeting.
Oh,
Parks and Rec.
it was Parks and Rec,
Parks and Rec.
yeah,
but yeah, we're meeting with them.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. Again, who would have expected us to want to establish 3 revolving funds in the same year? And, you know,
Well, you
the
know-
first 2 will be approved, but who knows which one gets to be. So that's,
Yeah,
no, I think, you know, I think you're playing the right devil's advocate. My question is if I say to the town, the reason I'm doing this is because it takes 16,000 out of the budget that you aren't, or it isn't, goes into the raise and appropriate, and therefore you're taxed on.
That I've already taken out of the budget because the budget's gonna pass.
Yeah,
So then you have to use the word, we've already approved, pretty much they've approved, in a sense,
I don't-
they've
I don't think you
approved.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No, but you see where I'm going?
You don't want to stand up in front of the town and say, I assumed I knew how you were going to vote.
Yeah.
no, I would never say that.
well, you
Wait.
know, one of the things that we can do to address it is before we vote on the budget, advisory does its presentation, so we can just highlight that this is the maneuver
Because
that's,
probably nobody's gonna speak about the revolving fund. Like, we had a tax title one on there last year or the year prior, you just read it and never,
But it would
yeah, nobody stands up
And
and
I'll be
talks
there
about it.
if it, you know, we run into problems.
Yeah.
No,
You
I
shouldn't
think
put
you know,
money-
but-
No.
If the budget passes without the money in your,
Yeah, you
department,
still get the
your
money,
account,
it's Nanachka's problem, because she gets the money, what in the heck is she gonna do with it? I mean, other than deposit it, you know? Because she has to pay the wages for the drivers.
So
So,
would you pay, can you
I
pay them?
can, if it's not appropriated, I can't.
right, you can't pay the wages for the
Well,
drivers.
I know, but what I'm saying is if we pass the budget and you've not put it in, and then you try to get town to vote for a revolving fund, it's kind of like the cart before the horse.
We should ask Don what he thinks we should do, because I think Bob's got a good point.
Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
I think he's got a good point, and the fact that we have so many revolving funds.
I mean, you
I
could put
picked a
that,
bad year to,
you could put that article ahead of the budget. I mean, we don't normally do it that way, but
Well, I think that's a
That might
super
be the-
idea.
That
might be
that
the
might
best
work.
thing to do.
That's a
Yeah,
great
that's the
idea.
so that's a question for Don,
But
because,
then, but even then, you can't raise the budget on the floor.
Right.
No, you decrease it.
unless you pull it
Because
out
if
of
it-
somewhere else.
I'm
No,
not,
I'm just
I'm not
saying,
starting down
we
that road. So this, I think either way, this has got to go in the budget. And you can amend the budget down to take this out if that other article passes.
I don't know, let's run this by
I'll
Don and
talk
see
to
what,
Don about that.
what you
That's-
guys put your heads together.
So- Put it before the budget,
Right.
but leave the money in your
Right,
account.
and then we
And
can
if it
amend it out.
passes, before we vote on the budget, amend the budget.
That would be.
What you're saying?
I mean, it's the only way.
Let her think about it at least.
Yeah.
It's the only way that
That
it's
makes
gonna-
sense. Makes good sense.
Yeah,
So,
you're,
yeah, so
they're
that's-
not gonna make any
it's an
decisions. for us.
outstanding
No, but
issue.
we're just making sure we got the right.
Yeah, so think about it. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I just think it was dumb to have it under raise and appropriate when we know we get the money all the, it's 100%.
I think in the past, though, we've always put stuff in the budget, and then the following year, after the revolving fund had been established, that's when it got taken out. And I applaud you for being more aggressive this year with that, but
You're cute.
I still want to make sure we have
No,
all
I
the
think it's a
services.
good, I think it's a really good point. No, all right, so see what Don thinks.
Do you happen to know the origin of the rule that prevents amending upward, but allowing amending downward of a budget at town meeting?
My understanding, and my understanding of many things like this is flawed, is that it's a state law.
That's my guess.
Me too, but I just don't know where.
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I don't think
You
it's
would
a
be the person
Bolton
to do
rule,
Anyhow,
because we
so,
would have broken it all.
it doesn't matter. I only
true.
did it because I think it's really dumb to be in the budget.
Well, I
Since
mean.
we're reimbursed 100%, so, I was
You're gonna
making
ask a
everybody's life
question
simpler.
about it. I mean, I agree with you, but
Yeah, no, so,
No, I
That's
think
the
the
pa-
rule about amending the budget up is because in the past, especially in very small towns, you could get a packed town meeting.
That's
oh yeah,
All
no,
the
that's
firemen
true.
could come in,
Good,
all
yeah.
five
And
of
that's
them,
happened in the
and
past.
double or triple their budget.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true, that's probably.
So anyhow, whatever you guys decide how to handle it is fine with me and fine with us. I just tried to make it simple, and I figured it was a no-brainer, so, but Bob has a really good point. So, now it's Lisa's turn, you're tired of me.
Okay, follow that one.
Okay, well, I had just brought in some information about the COA and Senior Center and just really what we're doing. So if you want to pass that way, Brian, there we go. So attached is just sort of a little blurb, or Penny, on who we are and what we're doing. And so, so basically, I think probably everyone knows that we're open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at the Bolton Country Manor. We rent space there, and that's from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. However, Mart Van transportation, programming, access to staff, and support from staff is available Monday through Friday. So again, it's Heather and I are the staff. We are a staff of 2 for this. There are 1,306 seniors currently in town, and that makes up for 22% of the town's total population. And that percentage is expected to spike to 26% by 2030.
Lisa, what's the age cutoff?
60
60 and above,
Okay.
Yep.
yeah.
That's
But
what
I
we
would point
consider-
out that we don't have 25% of the budget or 20% of the budget. Just
No, I'm just
understanding I know
Well, there's
why.
also not 60% little kids in the town either.
This is
right?
true,
So-
so, yeah.
So, we were talking about the software, there was a software question or something earlier. So the My Senior Center software has been an invaluable tool for us. It really helps us do our job much better and much more accurately. And I pulled these service statistics from My Senior Center. So you can see 622 Mart Van rides were given to folks who needed help with transportation. 226 Meals on Wheels were delivered to homebound seniors. 101 outreach services were provided to caregivers and seniors in town. And 754 seniors were served. The next blurb is just kind of what we're doing, an example of what we're doing in terms of services, programs, and events. Our support services include, helping folks with SNAP benefits, and SNAP was once called food stamps, housing, fuel assistance, home health care information, insurance information. I see the Council on Aging as problem solvers. No 2 days are ever alike. We never know what we're kind of in for sometimes in terms of the questions and the problems that come up. But I will say unequivocally, in this very fast-paced, technical, automated world, the seniors that we help most often need help navigating through that. And it's not that we can fire off a text or an email. It is a face-to-face, multiple face-to-face meetings and repeated phone calls to kind of get folks what they need.
The other thing she does is that it's not just seniors she works with. There are a lot of people in town who have parents
Adult children,
adult children
absolutely.
who have
Caregivers, care
questions, and
partners.
so
Yep.
they call her up.
Yep, so, you know, it's the human contact part of our job is huge, because we're not, you know, we don't work with, or the large majority of the folks that we're working with, don't, really go onto the internet or do any of that. So, and sometimes it's as easy as sort of giving a phone number and a referral source, but many times it's days and sometimes weeks to get people in the right place. So that's support services, but we do like to have fun. Our wellness programs are great. We have 2 fitness programs, Reiki, reflexology, blood pressure clinics, all sorts of health-related lectures. There are programs that involve learning new skills like painting and really cool craft programming too. We've taken some great van trips to casinos, a vineyard, Boston Harbor, the theater, restaurants. So we know how to have fun too.
But
Yeah.
socialization is really
It's
important
key.
for seniors.
Yeah, it's
So that's
critical.
one of the things that, as long as you've got socialization, you find the levels of dementia and Alzheimer's tends to go down because there's human contact.
Yeah.
It's really important.
And it staves off, you know, the suicide rate is through the roof too for the senior population also. So staying involved and connected is important. Attached is our new newsletter. We introduced that in December. LPI, Liturgical Press, is now printing that for us. It's doubled the number of copies we had, and we're getting it for free. So basically that means
Because they're clever.
yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah.
So
That
they
is
kind
great.
of reached out and we jumped on it. But it allows us to have more visibility in the community, and it, you know, kind of lends itself to us, you know, in terms of the delivery of services and support that we can lend. It
And the
helps with that
businesses in
too.
town have been great about having us drop off,
Right.
you know, 10 copies everywhere.
Yeah.
They've been really supportive.
And then we've worked hard to sort of strengthen our community connections and partnerships, and listed just some folks that we've been working with. And then as we move forward, some goals, or our goals include exploring alternative transportation options for folks, getting from point A to point B in a rural community when you don't have your access to a car anymore, you're not allowed to drive, is very difficult. And we have one MART van right now. So promoting programs and services to help combat food insufficiency, because that is also an issue in town. And then also would like to increase our social media presence, and that's to sort of boost our awareness and visibility as well. And then also, really important, we want to really determine the most vulnerable, underserved, older adults in our community, and then get together care plans and service plans that would best suit them and help them.
And we also want to develop plans for the 60 to 75-year-olds.
The younger seniors,
The younger
yes,
seniors,
trying
who really
get
don't want to
them
be called
involved.
seniors, that's part of the issue. They,
Yeah, older adults.
older adults, yeah. And so that's one of the,
Yeah.
well,
Young seniors.
That's great. I had 2 questions. I'm sure
Sure,
other
yeah.
people have questions too. And the first one relates to the thing you just mentioned about the younger, older seniors. And I'm
Yes.
just wondering whether the software even allows you to track the age brackets of who's
Absolutely.
participating in which.
oh, yeah.
Yes.
And Heather and Pam, oh, hello.
You have a friend.
Heather, I have a friend. Heather and Pam talk to each other all the time because we now agree on this, you know, on if we lose somebody, we now are totally in agreement. So we have, and we can range it by any shape or form, so we
So
can.
there's a whole range of statistical data that we can get from the My Senior Center. You know, we can change the filters however we want.
Yeah.
And sort of get that information.
Great. My other question was just about MART. I've
Mhm.
heard there was some stuff in the papers about like the MART contract and just, I don't know is there someone on the Council on Aging who's involved with MART directly, or is it just we get the information from, I think Ken Troop is the.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ken, he's the market.
Like, is there, do you think our services from MART are vulnerable at the moment, or,
No.
okay?
I don't at all. We are sort of working with Erica the town planner, in pursuing a micro grant to work with alternative transportation, that alternative transportation would take care of the medical rides and free up Mart Van for other important things, like taking people shopping and picking up prescriptions and, again.
Because right now,
yeah,
medical takes priority over
Right,
everything else.
it's very limited.
My dad drives seniors around to medical appointments and stuff, just in his own car. Like, I don't know if he does it through, or if he's just,
Well,
My dad
that's
drives.
why the village,
so I didn't know if there was some sort of
There's a-
service like that.
the only problem with that is
Regular
that some of us are happy to do it, but you have a liability.
Yeah, sure.
And so unless you're doing it under something that has an umbrella liability policy, it's a problem.
Do you allow a child or a senior to be accompanied with their caregiver?
On the Mart van or in general? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Because the Mart van driver is not really supposed to assist someone onto the van. So if someone needs assistance, they're welcome to take their care partner, someone that they've hired through a home health care agency, something like that. Always welcome. As well as to our events. The senior center, it's, we work hard to make sure that it's a warm, welcoming, safe place for everyone.
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else?
I was just a little curious about your relationship with Montechusett as the kind of elder service agency in the area and sort of how that relationship works and how collaborative you find it to be, or any maybe like gaps or strengths that you have there.
I would say Montechusett has some great resources. They offer a variety of services. I think we have a great relationship with them. I think the sort of what I see from the delivery of service piece, seniors get frustrated waiting so long for services to be implemented. I know that there is a home health aide, homemaker shortage, and people can wait weeks, sometimes months. There was someone in my office that was waiting 7 months for services to kick in. Yeah.
The other thing Lisa's been trying to do is really do a lot of grant writing. She's just in the process of applying for a grant, because we don't have
AED,
an AED, you know what an AED is?
the
A
defibrillator.
defibrillator at the senior center. So, but they're quite pricey.
Take ours.
We
have one upstairs.
We've had it for
You're
years.
supposed to. What happens
Yeah,
if
you
someone?
can have.
But I wonder how it, I know, but how did we get it? I mean.
Well, the library got one because of a donation.
Well, you have to keep in mind, we rent space. It's not a town
Oh,
building.
good
It's
point.
not,
That's
the
a
town
good
doesn't
So
own
I
it.
That's a
looked
good
in that
point.
But
today
I
and they
think
don't
if we
want
could
one.
get
You
it
have to
on
have
a
somebody
grant.
trained, certified.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I am
Oh, you are?
AED and
Oh.
CPR certified,
all right,
but
great.
the other thing that I had reached out to our fire chief to see if we could get CPR and AED certified. I know they do that in other towns, and it would be great.
So there are things like that she's always looking for grants to.
What's the price of one of those?
It sort of runs the gambit. That's why I want to get some more information again
In
from
the
the fire
hundreds.
chief, but it's
800 is the low end.
I've seen 300, I've seen, 1,000, so we have to find which one would work best for us. And I think that he'd be the perfect person to tell us. I'm just waiting to get that information.
I don't think we can vote on this tonight because we need to resolve the question.
That's
of what
fine,
to do, but
and to tell you the front, anything you decide to do is fine with us. You know why I did it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanna,
Before that, I think.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
as long as Brian just lets us know what you're doing.
so I just wanna, we'll definitely do that, I just wanna make sure the total that we would need to put in, you think is 16 grand?
16 grand.
And
12.
split between the van and the gas?
12,000 for wages and about 4,000 for gas.
Okay.
Because at our run rate right now, that's what it's looking like for this year.
Yeah,
We're probably a little less than that, but, the use of the van has increased, so the more, we're 217 in the hole on gasoline. And on the van drivers, we started out at 9,000 and we're down to 686, so obviously we're gonna be in the hole by next month,
Okay.
so. But we'll deal with that at the end of the year with a transfer or whatever, we'll figure it out, since you've already got the money.
Right.
It's a nice thing you get the money.
Well, I think we're good. Thank you so much for all the excellent information.
Oh, sure.
And
Happy to.
congrats on
Thank you.
your
I'm
first,
I'm so happy to be back. It's
yeah.
wonderful. Yeah, it's great.
And we're very happy to have her.
Yes, we are.
Yes, very.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Good night.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Town Clerk Pam Powell, covering 3 budgets.
Yep.
So we'll start with 161 if that works for you.
Yes. Right down there. All right, so I've got the numbers of the COLA and all that from the NACHGA.
Okay,
And, including the stipend, and then, so I'll just go right to purchase of service, the PO box, which we are required to have. The software support, these are the bylaw supplements, and I know it's confusing. Because what we put in the budget this year is what I'll use for, this coming town meeting. So the money I'm putting in for next year is for the next year. Follow?
Yep.
And we kept it around that number, so that's good, we haven't gone up from that. The web services, the annual maintenance of the, E-code, that's all the bylaws that are online, and they're searchable, and they're used by a lot of departments. You can compare towns, you can pull up all sorts of stuff, all sorts of data from, our bylaws of different towns and that, so it's been a real great resource. Okay, supplies, we bumped that up, because I've got a timestamp machine up there that is probably 100 years old. And I've gotten a new wheel on it so that my last wheel is, I'm at 2020, and that's the last of the years. And I had to,
Town hall's over.
I know,
You
I gotta stop.
gotta close it.
So, the gentleman that came to fix it recently told me that to get a whole nother wheel is like half the price of getting a new machine, which, I mean, our machine is just, basic. But the one that he's recommending for smaller towns and what is about $500. And what it'll do is like, different departments can come in and push their button and then have a date stamp that is reflective of their department. And the whole town hall uses it whenever we have anything coming in. So, it will certainly get a lot of use.
so just,
Sorry.
to pause on that,
Sure.
so this is 500 on top of the 350 that we have in our original sheet, so that is
Oh, it's 850.
It's $850
for supplies.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And how many years is that one?
Programs, huh? Right.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it's a long time. Because it's electronic, it's not manual. I mean, mine is literally, I have to go in at the beginning of every month
And put in the,
and pull down the wheel, and get purple all over my hands. Anyway,
You're not gonna miss that ritual, Pam?
no. Well, it's funny when you stamp something in and it's like January 34th. Well, no. And then dues and membership, pretty self-explanatory. And then meetings, we have 3 conferences, a lot of training. And that's what it costs for the 2 of us to go. And we tag team, we don't always go to the same ones and all that. So we try to keep the expense down there. And so that's about it for 161. Any
Now,
questions?
yeah, let's just pause there for a second.
Sure.
So if I add in the 500, Nanachka, do you have an
The fun-
It's
updated bottom line?
$109,061.98.
Okay. We'll deal with them all at the end.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now, 162, it's an election year, so, but actually, I'm comparing it to last year because we bought the new, voting tabulator. It's not too much, it's pretty similar. Well, it's $500. So, we've got 4 elections this year. We have the presidential primary, the town election, the state primary, and the presidential. And we have early voting, which is, they cost a unmandated or unfunded mandate. And for the presidential, I will probably have to hire police, which
Can you say,
The town election though is
Oh, the
last year's budget, right? Isn't it? I mean,
yes, but it's like, okay, so we've got
you
it.
gotta-
So it's not this May's budget. You're right, I said it in the wrong order.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah,
next,
yeah. So
yeah.
it's,
every.
Yeah.
Gonna
so
add money
actually,
to-
you're right. You're exactly right. The primary and the town is in this budget, but it's the September primary, the presidential, and the next
Next year's
town
town
meeting. You're right. I've got 2020 in my brain, so I'm like,
It's hard, yeah.
so, yes, that is true.
can you say a little bit about how you decide whether you need police?
Usually, like anticipation of turnout. Chief Nelson is great about supplying, like if he's got, for most elections, whoever's on duty will swing by the high school and check in with me and just see what's going on. But with the presidential, is just so many people and so much going on and, you know, people standing outside and whatnot. So I like to have, I don't do it the whole day. I don't do it the whole day that the polls are open, but I do have it for
Certain
like
peak
4
times.
hours. Exactly.
Yeah, because there's still activities going on
Well,
at school.
Well, no, the presidential will have, there'll be no school
No
that day,
school.
which is great. The district is such a big help with that.
Do you, I know we don't have it on our sheet, but do you happen to know what our actuals were for the last presidential election cycle?
How many people showed up?
No,
People that showed
sorry,
up?
in terms
Oh,
of the, like, the
I-
wages expense and the
Oh.
purchase of services.
I don't
Okay, that's-
actually. These are all just my budget numbers, sorry.
So
But we'll get, I would guess we'll get 90% turnout, which is incredible.
that's good.
Yeah, it is.
And so that presidential year bump up is reflected in both wages and purchase of services?
Yes. Actually, purchase of service stays the same because you still have to have the coding and you still have to buy the ballots.
Because it looks like it went
It
up
went
in
up.
our,
Almost
if you
$2,000.
look here.
Oh, right, okay, so, let's see, I've got this divvied out here.
Well, it went
The
up,
coding is the new equipment, that's what's reflected in that.
Okay.
And then there's annual maintenance. I've also factored in, I should take that out. I also factored in, because I just learned we're renting another piece of equipment, or I was gonna rent another piece of equipment for early voting, but the state's paying for that now. I should have taken that out. So that's like $900 coming out of purchase of service. So, purchase of service. Yeah, so that'll be about, so that comes to
So-
like 4,
I'm just looking at your, so that 5,610 is what we have as our grand total? But
Yes.
It sounds like we can
you can take,
pull out 900.
yes, you absolutely can, yes, I just learned that this week. That they're covering the use of another piece of equipment.
And so it's still up. Right?
Yeah,
Or,
but it'll be 900, so what's
Actually, your
5610?
bottom line will be down.
down, but
Yeah.
What will the bottom line be?
900.
10,730.
Thank you.
10, 7, 30, okay.
Okay.
So it was last year.
Any other questions about 162? Okay.
And 163 is pretty straightforward as well. The $200 wages, purchase of service, I did have to bump that a little bit because of the purchase of service is the census that we have set out. And the postage goes up every year and, just more households and it just,
So this is for the town census.
yes, not the federal.
now,
We
is
have-
this the first year it could be filled out online?
Oh, you mean you could take a picture of it and send it in? It's
Yes.
not filled out, yes. No, actually, it's the second
Oh,
year.
it's the second year.
Second
It's the
year,
first
and it's
I
been
did it, but it's good.
Hugely successful. And then we have it all electronically too, which is nice.
So, it looks like, just the town census has almost doubled in cost, or, I mean, maybe not doubled, but
Yeah.
it's up like 30-40%.
Yep.
And that's just a product of how many you're sending out and what's included and.
Well, really postage too. I mean, if you get a jump in the postage, we get a discount by having them send it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we have to do a second mailing,
Okay.
and it is required by the state to do it every year. So. But I will say though, it's really good data. I mean, otherwise, I know the state of Massachusetts is one of very few states that does do an annual census, but we have good data, so I can give departments real good data. They don't have to go back to the 2010
Right.
federal census, which
Yeah.
is so off at this point, so.
It's true. I have been the beneficiary of your town clerk data,
Yep.
so I can vouch for its quality.
Good.
All right, so just to quickly review, for 161,
Mm-hmm.
we have a new bottom line of $109,61.98.
Mhm.
All right, so is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. For 162, we have a new total of $10,730. Motion to approve, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then for 163, for a total of $2,950. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Good luck, you're gonna have a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's early voting for
It's, yeah.
virtually every, there's early voting.
There's
for-
early voting for our state elections, so we have it, for the upcoming primary, we'll have it in September, and we'll have it in, for the presidential, yeah. On top of the absentee, that's right. Don't get me wrong. Anyway. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right.
Bye.
We're like a couple minutes early, but you guys are here, so we're gonna talk with Travis and Paul McKenzie on MIS.
All right, that's Travis. I don't think
Hi,
you folks
nice
met
to
him
meet
yet.
you.
Good to meet you. He'll be delivering next year.
Great. Let's all just get there. I gotta turn back to. All right, so yeah, feel free to just kind of walk through this year's budget for us.
Yeah, so the top line's our fees, we're not gonna increase our costs. And then new PC setups are PCs we plan on leasing, that's the setup fees for them to get them up and running. Warranty extensions, we put that in there pretty much as a buffer in case something surprises us. I don't think we're going to need it. If that's the case, we will not spend it, but historically we have had some things there. Over the last, we've been here 3 years, for the last 3 years, what we've tried to do is build in the leases so that all the hardware purchases are built into the operating budget and we don't have to go make capital. So this budget marks our 5th year. The goal is to spread that out over 5 years nice and evenly, and we did a fairly good job at that, if you look at the numbers. So, we should be able to just keep everything up to date once this 5-year cycle's done. I'm pretty proud over the last 3 years because we've actually added this expense to the operating budget without actually increasing the operating budget. So, as always, we're looking for opportunities to not spend money. So, this is like the worst case scenario of the budget. We're hoping this, surprises do happen, but we've been managing town enough, we don't foresee anything. Miscellaneous repairs and supplies. Again, that's just the number of something breaks. UPS batteries, when we migrated the librarian's PC, the director Kelly's PC, her PC didn't support Windows 10. We purchased a new PC for her. So that's the kind of stuff that comes out of that line. Software support, again, those are vendors that are on a support contract. Then the web services are services that the town pays for that is pretty much monthly and routine. Comcast is for internet, Google is free email. VTH is virtual town hall. Those 2 line items contain what the subscription cost is to maintain the website for the town. Let's see, domain registrations, we have to renew our
Sorry,
internet domains.
what's BCIS versus hosting? What's the difference?
You know the difference between those two?
That's not sure exactly what BCIS is.
Yeah, we get the invoice for them, so, and they're divided up. So one of them, the web host, will be to actually serve the site. BCIS, might be their content manager, so that they can, manipulate pages. Each employee can manipulate their pages. Is what I believe it is.
I think it is a service fee, like it's part of a fixed contract.
Well, they
for
don't combine
support
it.
and stuff.
Yeah, they just break it out.
Yeah.
And my sense is most municipalities of our size use virtual town hall, is that?
Yeah.
Most of them do, and it's actually good for the state because every town has a consistent look and feel.
Yeah.
You get onto a town's website and some of them are really nice, some of them are like, ugh, what's that? You know what I mean? So, a town of Bolton stature, I think we should fit in, you know what I mean? Just my opinion.
Yeah.
Invoice Cloud, we use that for submitting invoices. Query Manager, that's so that we can query the assessor data,
For what data? Oh, the assessor.
for like houses
Yeah.
and, real estate, everything that they're. And then the next line are leases, so which is pretty much the flow of equipment and replacing it on a 5-year cycle.
So when I look back at last year's budget, it looks like this year is about a 3% increase over last year's.
2.9 something.
Yeah.
$1,746.
And one of the questions I had doesn't really relate necessarily to the numbers, but just about the town's vulnerability to cybersecurity attacks. Like I know
Ransomware, like Charlton and Townsend.
And what was, I want to say down like in the Fall River area, there was one that got whacked on July 4th.
We
So what
back
do we
up
do?
everything here locally every night. So, and it backs up to an encrypted disk. So even if we had an attack, it shouldn't be able to attack those files because those files are encrypted. So and nobody has access to those files, but an administrator logged into the server. We're the only ones that have administrator accounts on the server.
Okay.
So it's hidden from the network in the sense that you can't really get to the backup. Then we back up offsite every 4 hours. So worst comes to worst, everything, in town hall gets destroyed, we pull that data back from the internet and we can get you back up and running. And again, that's all encrypted, protected accounts that nobody has the passwords to.
I see here.
Yeah.
So that provides us a 4-hour slot. Now, restoring locally would take about a day. Let's say we just lost everything, we had to roll back everything, the hardware was still good, and we didn't procure hardware, you're looking at a day to come back up. Pulling it from the cloud, assuming we have a complete loss, and if their sprinkler head goes, it's an old building, you never know, and maybe it'll fall down. Millville was in jeopardy of their town hall falling down.
Give anybody any idea?
So, now we're probably looking at 3-4 days to get back up, just dragging that data back from the cloud service, 3-4 days. Once we procure the hardware. So, but yeah, the Millville, they had an old schoolhouse that anyone familiar with Millville?
Yeah.
That was a town that went bankrupt, the state had to
Yeah,
take it
I
up.
think they did. But anyways, they had an old schoolhouse, someone tore down a bearing wall, and the building pulled apart. And I heard the cloud cracked, the floor dropped in some areas, fortunately. So the building got condemned, everyone was kicked out. We ran them out of our basement for a year and a half.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
They were working out of the garage in the police department. It was terrible. So we know disasters happen because, even though that wasn't, a flood or something like that, those poor people were displaced. It was a disaster, so.
Was it Swansea that got totally wiped out? Swansea or Dayton? I can't remember, somewhere in the Fall River.
For like a cyber thing? Or?
Yeah, a cyber thing. They got, all their data was seized and frozen out.
Yeah.
They wouldn't pay the ransom, so they had to operate on paper.
Yeah.
Well,
There is, like I said, worst case is, we get hit by ransomware at 5 p.m. You know what I mean? We lose a day's worth of work. So.
Now, the other thing related to this is there any training that the employees get about how to spot ransomware? Like, are you aware?
So we don't do any formal training, or?
I can speak to, so Kristen just sent out an email last week through Maya.
I was just gonna say.
They have a
just like
cyber training that they're requiring all of us to do.
Oh,
So,
good.
so there you go.
And Berlin's actually signed up with, I think it's something state sponsored, but I do think they have to pay, where they're actually going to try to trick employees into clicking on
It
stuff.
might have been a grant, I think.
Was it a grant?
To test,
So if you wanna do stuff like that, we can. So what they do is they send out stuff that people aren't supposed to be clicking on. They ask us, we just went through this to whitelist everything, so the emails won't get caught. Any protection we have in place, we take down for them. And then, they count clicks. So, okay, yeah, Paul clicked on this, Janice clicked on that. So now you know who you gotta go talk to, you know? But the town employees have been very good. I mean, they call us. We've told everybody, if in doubt, call. Don't click on things suspicious. If you get an email from me that's spelled correctly, chances are it didn't come from me. You know, if you get an email that's not spelled correctly and it comes from someone that's usually spelled correctly, don't click on it. I mean, if you just get a link, don't click on it.
So I'm not like a tech expert at all, and
Yeah.
one thing I'm wondering is like all of us have a town email address
That is.
through G Suite.
Yep.
So if we fall victim to one of these things through one of our town email addresses, could that actually infiltrate the whole system, or is there any? Because I'm like, if so, we should get access to whatever that training is, or whatever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, I mean, the worst, yes, it can in this context. If it's a piece of ransomware, typically the way ransomware will spread is, you'll get a message from me, it's masquerading, it's, oh, Paul McKenzie, I know that guy. And it might only be a Word document, or it's something, you say, I should open it. You click on it, and it'll send email to people it can find in your email list. So it propagates through email. So yes, the towns, potentially, because you're going to mostly interacting with town people, so those emails will be harvested and send a line that's ransomware.
Okay.
As far as anything with a malicious payload beyond that, so you click the Word document, it encrypts all your files on whatever PC you're on. So you're working on the job site reading bulletin email, in fact, there's systems that might be upset, you know what I mean? So, as an end user, think about that.
Yeah.
And again, your home PC, be careful, especially if, a lot of people don't back up their home PC, so. Always be careful with email, even if it's not bulletin email. Google does a pretty good job scanning and filtering and watching this stuff. Google's got a few billion mailboxes, and believe it or not, they're great with analytics. They watch everything everybody does for good reasons and bad reasons. So one of the good reasons is they're really good at filtering spam. They're really good at watching malicious emails. They see this thing come through. Every email's got a machine fingerprint. They start seeing the same thing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
They'll slow it down, and until they can understand they need to quarantine it. So being on Google's a good thing. They've got a lot of experience, so
Yeah.
That lowers the risk. It doesn't take it away.
Okay.
The firewall in town that we have is a UTM firewall. It's scanning all the packets coming through it, looking for malicious patterns as well. So before anything even gets to the desktop, the firewall has an opportunity to block it. Again, how accurate is it? Maybe 60% foolproof. Well-known signatures are going to get caught, but at least it doesn't sink through. It gets to the desktop. We're running antivirus software on the desktop. Users are locked down since we've got the server in place. They only have access to the information they need. So if the town clerk clicks on something, it's going to encrypt their files. Their assessor's going to keep plugging away because the town clerk doesn't have access to the assessor data. So we lock down our information in groups so that only people that need access to it have it. Not to take anything away from anyone, just to protect the data if something happens. The less we have to restore, the quicker we get back up and running. So, I don't know if that helps. It's just basically, this is generally accepted best practices, and we try to do that for everybody we serve.
Any other questions? So the town clerk hasn't asked you to create an app so that instead of voting traditionally, we'll just upload our results.
Trust me, the last business I wanna get into is anything that kind of votes after, I feel so bad for the Iowa people, you know what I mean? It's gonna be so embarrassing. I don't wanna get involved. I don't want my name out there. Their app didn't work.
Well, thank you for the information. So the bottom line number I have is $60,037.20. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
So we're actually running a little ahead of schedule, but it looks like.
Thank you.
I think I just saw it. Okay, there's that thing. So both of our representatives from Parks and Rec are here. Do you want to come on?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Great.
Good to see you both.
How are
Could you
ya?
just quickly introduce yourselves to the.
I'm Lauren Silly. I'm one of the Parks and Rec Commissioners.
Okay, Sterling, elected last year for my second time on the Parks and Rec Board. I've been on in 2002 to 2005, as I recall. And so interested in coming back to help out Laura Roberts. I'm the acting chairman right now, while Laura is in Morocco for
We're-
several months.
Yep,
Yes,
several
several
months. Yep.
So we'll do our best. Lauren has a little more longevity. Hopefully
Little
can
bit.
back us up a little. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I actually just want to, I realized I don't think I have the sheet for 650 with who's on the floor.
I-
6:30.
But I think I have 630 and 650.
It's all one
Combine
now.
them now.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's
They're all-
Yeah,
All right,
it's
so it's
combined
all.
now.
that's why you don't have 650. It doesn't exist.
Very helpful.
Much easier.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, why don't you just walk us through, and if you would, so obviously this is the second year that we'll have budgeted for Parks and Rec coordinators. Could you just say a little bit about what she's doing?
Yeah, so I think most of it is pretty straightforward. There's only one thing we're asking for that's additional last year. Having Ally as the Parks and Rec coordinator has been hugely helpful. Not only for events, things like the Halloween parade and party, which is probably our biggest event.
Speak of
she
the
is.
devil. You can come on up here. Sorry, we started a little early.
So she has been very helpful in events like that, having one kind of point person. The rest of us still are helping coordinate and do different tasks, but it's really helpful to have the one person that can kind of coordinate everything. And so that's our biggest event. It's also been really helpful to have someone in town hall to kind of check in on things that we didn't always know about, or certain like legal kind of questions or things like that. So that's been really big help. This was the first year we partnered with the Conservation Trust for the holiday tree celebration. And so that was really helpful, and I don't think we would have been willing to take it on without Ally being here, because it just, before we felt like these events kind of just became a lot on us, so it's really nice to have someone else. So she was hugely instrumental in getting the decorations up and coordinating volunteers for that, and cleaning up after the bonfire. Yeah, that was my husband mostly, but so that's been really helpful, and it's also been great. We've been trying to work to kind of figure out with the different sports teams how we can kind of make the fee schedule fair and legal, because we've heard there's some other kind of things that have come up. So it's been really helpful to have, again, just that one point person that can gather all information, and then if people need to get in touch with her, can all go through Ally. So don't take her away. That's been huge. So that's, yeah, I don't know if there's any other information you want about that.
Can you just remind us of how many different properties or facilities have some sort of scheduling thing that you have to handle? I mean, I know the town common is
That's an issue, right?
We definitely schedule Town Common, Memorial,
right.
Derby, Horse Ring, Bush. That's 5, and then there'll be the swim as well with the town beach. I'll be dealing with all the
Is Horse
Ring, Sheepfield.
Okay, yes.
I think that's the right way around there.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't really use Sheepfield.
Right.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
That's correct. Yep.
And that's another thing that'll be huge for the swim, as that comes up and registrations come in, it'll be great to have someone at town hall that can help collect them, because we were kinda depending on who was there at town hall collecting them, but now it'll be really helpful to have it go through one person and be a lot less confusing, I think, for parents.
Who does all the cleanup after in the front?
Us.
Volunteers.
Yeah, and the commission and, yeah, any volunteers that we.
You know, you might wanna reach out to Cub Scouts, because I remember when I was a leader, we cleaned up after the Bolton Fair. There's a number of troops, and they can use that service to get their badges. And
Cub
so-
Scouts,
Cub Scouts,
not, generally, what we're seeing today is
not the
that you're probably not gonna have that. Boy Scouts really count service hours. Cub Scouts, it's
Well,
very,
we did
very
do it,
minor.
yeah, but we did.
that
I
kind
wonder
of
if you
thing.
could use the high school.
We
They
could, yeah, we-
they
yeah.
need service hours.
That's what
Yes,
we
we
use
have.
with the
That's much more.
Yeah, and it's something we're
Much more
building
fruitful.
with having high schoolers
Yeah, but the
myself.
Boy Scouts will paint for you and all kinds of things,
Yeah.
construct things. They used to clean up the trails too, for the conservation department many
Yeah.
years ago.
Many years ago, it's just the overscheduling that you get today of children. Very difficult to get people out and get kids pulled away
Yeah.
for something like that.
I don't even know what the
It's very tough. I'm
enrollment
deeply
rate
involved
is
in it.
anymore.
In this area, Scouts has probably dropped by
Oh.
50%
That's too bad.
in the last 10 years. So with girls being added, that has been helpful, and that was one of the reasons that the Boy Scouts pulled girls into the program, was to boost their enrollment and their dues. Nationally, all Mormons left scouting on January 1st, and that was an 18.5% reduction in overall scout numbers. So it's gonna take some time.
This year?
The addition of
Girls made the.
LGBTQ and all that, plus allowing,
And the Mormons pay
having the
for
girls coming in.
every
didn't
boy,
match.
whether they participated or not.
That's
So
right.
every member of the
Yes,
Mormon church, every boy was a member, and only a percentage of them actually participated.
it's interesting. Prepaid, quite literally, prepaid by the church. And so they just didn't agree with the new values of scouting. And so, the numbers have dropped. So it's a different program than I saw 20 years ago when my kids were in. But, it's still active. It's just that the number of scouts has gone way down. Towns that had 2 and 3 scout troops like Clinton, now we're lucky to have 1. So you're seeing that in some of the larger towns. The numbers are just kind of collapsing. Scouts have merged. We merged with the council that was down at the Worcester to Connecticut border. Our council was kind of mid-county up to the New Hampshire border, and now we just merged into one great big council, mega council, so to speak. You're seeing that all over the country. It's just a trend.
So
Yeah.
maybe
It's tough,
High
as they
school.
say.
Yeah.
High school kids are about the best at the moment.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
And we're building that.
yes.
Because the more they come, the more they bring friends.
Yeah, they were very helpful with the Christmas tree
Yeah,
this year.
The
It was
decorations and stuff.
tremendously helpful.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we were lucky, the Christmas tree, well, I should say a holiday tree, forgive me, holiday tree, proper name, that was a donation essentially to the
goodness
Bolton
sake.
Conservation
I'm
Trust.
sorry.
Yeah.
Everything's getting to be so
So that was
politically correct.
huge, it
It's
was a huge
ridiculous.
donation by the Select Horticulture, which is on 117 as you go toward Leominster.
Okay.
Yeah, very generous people.
That was nice.
It was, yeah.
And how many hours, Ally, are reflected in your hours per week?
I do 12, roughly. It changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, even it out to be 12 most weeks.
All right, so thank you, that was really helpful. Now,
Sure.
if we can just run down the, I mean, the swimming wages, I think are pretty straightforward on the sheet down here. Now, starting with purchase of services, can you tell us what's baked into each of those?
Yep, so it kind of varies a little by year. This past year, I think that was the resurfacing of the basketball court, right, was under purchase of services. And so that was one big expense. It's also, we've had to replace, things like the sprinklers on some of the fields, so it's things like that. The additional one that's added, do you have that, the one we're proposing?
There's an additional
3,000, yeah, so what happened at Murphy's Court, the basketball court, and this was before my time, but my understanding was people used to have to go to the police station to get a key, to be able to turn the lights on.
Yes, that's correct.
And then once there wasn't someone at the police station all the time, we had to change the system, so, there was lights installed, and then neighbors weren't happy if they were on too late, so then a timer was put on, so they'd be turned off, I think, at 10 o'clock.
Because people kept leaving them on.
Right. Then
And they started vandalizing.
exactly, yeah, so that got vandalized, because I guess they weren't happy it was being turned off at 10. And that's left us with, the only solution is to set up something much more secure that people can't vandalize. So we've reached out to DPW. That 3,000 is kind of the general estimate. We're still waiting to hear back from an electrician on what the exact estimate would be. It's the kind of thing that we don't budget for normally, because
Right, it'd be
we
a
don't
one-time.
know when that, that would happen. I think we all feel bad for the people that are trying to use it properly and want to just go play basketball, but right now there are no lights.
So the 3,000 is an estimate from someone?
Yes.
It's from DPW, from Joe.
What about a camera?
Well, there was, I guess, a way to connect it, but I think the
Wireless
proposed solution was to trench into the Memorial Fieldhouse where a control box would be. So it would be behind a locked door, is
Makes
my
sense.
understanding.
I don't agree.
Is it, did
I
you hear
believe it's
something
like
different?
a heavy-duty
Oh,
metal,
armored?
sort
That's
of,
what-
yeah,
Oh, all right.
I
box that
think
would
that's what he talked
enclose,
about last time.
enclose a timer that we
Thank
would
you.
set again.
Or relative, that he said that would take us.
Right.
Yes, as much as Joe can
Exactly.
find. That was and that's the ballpark figure that he's come up with.
My misunderstanding.
I think we've talked about that, but
Might
that's
be an idea.
more money again, and we,
Yeah, so
And the
this was
safety
the,
of that, just sitting somewhere on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, so Laura Roberts had previewed this
Right.
with me a little bit, and there were a couple concerns I had. One is just understanding who is using it and needs the lights. Like, are we sure that it's Bolton residents? Because I'm loath to spend $3,000 to provide lights for people that aren't even
Right.
Bolton folks.
Yep.
And the other thing is there a cheaper deterrence option? Like, I think about when you pull the alarm in a school for a fire and you get like ink sprayed on you, like if that, if that happened, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just don't know if that would be cheaper, but just,
I don't
it
think
just,
that would, the liability on that could be pretty, you could put an electric.
If it was a short person, it could blind them.
Yeah, right.
we
They
haven't
shouldn't
thought
be
of,
messing around with things.
we haven't thought about ink, but I mean, I think Laura did talk a lot to DPW and, to try to figure out.
about motion sensor
Yeah.
lights or things like that, and that was no from DPW. I can't remember why, but like whether it was
Anything,
animals or,
tree
yeah.
limbs, animals, anything,
You know.
bird flying.
But I
Lights
think
going on
that
and
is a
off.
good point about, I mean, our guess is that it wasn't Bolton residents that vandalized it. Could have been, we don't
but
know.
even who,
but-
Oh.
like who's
Right, who
using
else?
it?
Right, so we don't really know. But, and I don't
Yeah,
know
it's-
that we've had complaints that the lights aren't on.
Nobody has contacted me.
Yeah, but I know if it's teenager, I don't know that they would know to, or go ahead to contact. I don't know if people are just going. We have no way to know at
Yeah.
this point.
My son used to play basketball at night, they'd go and play, and they're Bolton kids, but
Yep.
who knows how many other
Yep.
people from wherever.
It could be a combination too.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, we don't
Well,
know.
let me, excuse me for interrupting. Let me
Yeah.
just throw out that if they're there, at least you know where they are, if it's your.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
You know, we have heard from parents of kind of people that used to play basketball there, and it was used very often. I don't know currently if that's still.
And keep in mind, these kids go to a regional school, so if the buddies get together to play basketball, you'll have kids from Lancaster.
Oh, definitely.
That's true.
So I
Yeah,
think
I don't think anyone's getting off of 495 just to go.
Yeah, and I think there was, when I talked to Laura though, she thought that it was possible that there were people from out of town coming.
Right.
And again, I just like,
They used to do that on Memorial Field, play soccer. They used to have teams that would come from other
Yeah,
towns.
but
Before
my
they
recollection
started to
was it
charge
wasn't
them.
really, they weren't really pushing the Bolton people
Well,
out
that,
of there.
yeah, they were.
They
The
were?
Bolton people,
Okay.
yeah. The, Bolton people couldn't play if they were, those out-of-towners were on the field.
It's totally impossible to police the field, but the question is how do you make the lights secure so they don't get vandalized? That's the issue.
And that's what our question was, and that's where we got
Safe
this.
place.
We can put a cage around it, like,
I think that's like, it is like just a heavy duty
just seems like a lot of
metal-
money.
yeah.
I
A light.
I think they've, it was already in a metal, but similar to what's above your head. We had something like the metal box, grey box on the wall.
Yeah.
We already had something like that, and they prized it open and got into there. So it's the net, you know.
We have another comment.
How are the lights for the baseball field gonna be controlled?
Good question.
At the moment, they're being connected to the meter, which is in the snack shack, which the baseball people have control over when they use that.
Okay,
So
so
they will,
someone's-
it was switched on and switched off. There's a time. I think they cannot be on after
Right, but
like
it's gonna
10.
be manually controlled.
Manually controlled by whoever is using that field.
Yeah, I imagine that this box is gonna be something like the streetlight control box down by, you know, the intersection of 495 and 117.
Uh-huh.
It's been hard to
It's
get
just
like
too bad it's so
details.
expensive to put it inside of that
Yeah, I'm
field house.
There's so little in this town for teenagers to
Yeah,
do.
I agree.
I'm personally loath to say that if there's a cheaper way to solve the problem, I'm all for it. But I think we do need to solve the problem.
Yeah, and we have reached out to DPW. We've been waiting to hear back after we've contacted them a couple of times about like actually getting an electrician to go out and give us an exact estimate, but this was the closest we were given.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked at how expensive this seems.
So were we. Yeah.
Like,
But if you think along the lines of what Bob is saying, those control boxes for, I mean, I imagine just the box is pretty darn expensive, let alone all the.
Yeah, you're putting it on a concrete foundation and, you know, all this other stuff, but, you know, if you take a sledgehammer to those things, you're not gonna damage them.
The cage idea is rather novel, to tell you the truth.
yeah, I mean,
You know, if you enclose it in just normal, you know, fence wire.
They'll get
couple
rid
of
of that.
I think if they
You could break it, yeah.
They must have had a crowbar to get into the
Oh, is
box
that
we
right?
had there already,
Yeah.
so.
And I think the reason we were talking about it and we were going back and forth with him is that we don't want to do something that's going to cost $500 and then be broken again in 6 months. So I mean, this was kind of this is what we can do to make it more permanent.
remind me again what the attempts have been so far, because I know like you did something and then it was vandalized again, so what were the interim measures that you took?
So it was,
I don't know what the original timer would have gone into.
right, I think, yeah, yeah, I don't know what the actual thing looked, but the timer was then the next kind of phase.
Actually, just going back to being stood there with Joe and Laura,
Yeah.
it was like my first day. So it had been prized open on like a key locked, like that would have. And so then they had done like a padlock with like the sort of metal sort of like latch. And then so thinking that would be more, so they'd gone through both of those kinds of.
To turn it on again?
Yeah, to bypass
So they
the
can-
timer, and then they've damaged the timer as well, because where you adjust like the sort of little spokes that put the time in,
The hands.
Yeah.
that they've broken those off so that it won't,
So
you
what
can't
is,
set it again.
what is our shut off time?
10 p.m.
Okay. Have we, I could be totally off base, but I'm actually wondering if just leaving the lights on during the months, whether the electricity is cheaper than $3,000 or whatever.
Well, it's because of the neighbors.
It's a neighbor's issue. The
Didn't
neighbors
want
are
them.
Too
complaining.
bright.
No, I meant like having it, leave them on every day until 10.
Well, you still have to have a timer.
It's people coming at 2 a.m. in the morning who would, that's the time it was damaged, that kind of time.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's
so
what I've heard, that it was
who would
in the
turn
middle
them
of the
on? I mean,
night.
if it was manual, you'd have to have somebody turning them off at 10. And, you know, you'd have to put a control center over in the police department.
Which is
So there'd
never,
be a
when there's nobody ever there.
Thousands of,
So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's what the
you'd have to have it controlled out of Devon's.
Yeah. Dispatch.
I mean, I agree that we should have some sort of solution, but I just, $3,000 seems
And
crazy.
they can't ask different, I mean, why does it just the DPW
Oh, yeah, I would
department?
ask other people, I mean,
Yeah,
Like
can't you get estimates from
Or
electricians?
even ask, like,
Can she? As a,
As the, like, it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
who do we ask in the respect
ask
of,
anybody.
yeah,
Okay.
It's under $10,000, you can,
yeah, so
You
you can
know
find,
somebody
you
in
don't have
town
to
who
wait for
does
Joe. You might be
metalworking
waiting
or,
for
I mean,
Eva.
yeah.
or ask
tell
them, like, I'm wondering if there are other towns that have dealt with a similar issue, right? Like,
Okay.
we can't-
talk to the school.
And have they, what steps have they taken
School
to
has
secure it?
all their
Stowe are really
stuff
great to
inside
talk
in
to,
the
they have
apartment,
like
in a
such
room,
more
you know,
mature,
Command center.
like recreation department, you know, the lady over there's been there 20 years, so
Yep.
she's a really great resource. I speak to her regularly, so I can ask her what, if they have a similar
Yeah, and you can
setup.
secure bids, or get, well, not bids, but estimates yourself from electricians. And get an idea of what it really would cost.
So is it, do you need an electrician to fix what's broken now?
I think we have to have an electrician to fix it, and I think then Joe was probably gonna do the box from DPW. That would be my understanding, but it has been very.
Just trying to think who else you would call, like, I get the electrician part, but who would you call
But
for,
maybe an
to
electrician
protect?
Does all
would
that.
know
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah,
security.
Yeah.
other people he would recommend.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure that there's gotta be somebody else in the state that has wanted to secure a light control.
Right,
The other person to contact would be Chief Nelson.
yeah.
Yes,
Wasn't he, I feel like
he has been
was.
involved in the discussions,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, not necessarily in the solution, but just in the, he would, you know, has dealt with the fact that it's been damaged and it's been reported and things, so.
I would think an electrician would be able to tell you
Or ask Jim Boudry.
who could
He's our
do
electrician.
foundation
Yeah.
work and
Right.
pipe and whatever. They may even be the ones to
You
do
say
it.
to be armored, yeah.
And the fact is, regardless where it is, it should be on a timer, so that you don't have to have somebody there at 10 o'clock.
Well, yeah, but
Right.
they
That's
had
the
timer
idea.
and they put it back.
No, yeah, but my point is, it could be in the police department and at a
Oh, yeah,
timer it
no.
goes off.
Okay.
You don't know that.
All right, so
Too wily.
let's just quickly talk about the equipment and supplies lines, and then we'll, so in equipment,
So equipment, that's partly, things for the town beach, I think that's where their uniforms and things like that fall under. Equipment was also,
Yeah, I'm gonna say to you that the Murphy's lights came out of equipment, and the purchase of services is like porta potties, which we
that's, yeah, I
spend
had them switched, you're right.
police detail,
Holiday lighting, for example, or Halloween too.
That's in
Yeah.
purchase of services.
Yep.
yeah. So the equipment
The other thing
really has
for
only been Murphy's Lights, which was we put in half, and Murphy's Insurance
the
donated
resurfacing.
for
yeah,
resurfacing
the court.
the court.
Under supplies, I had the candy that we give to the children. Also know about Red Cross. Do we have a?
Yes.
That was that for the lifeguards?
Oh, thank you, okay.
Yeah, we have a yearly membership with Red Cross to run the swim lessons under their umbrella, and we do some training for some of the lifeguards, I believe. I haven't been
Yeah.
through that part of
Yeah,
the year yet,
that's
but
part of it.
So can I ask about that? So with the Red Cross training, somebody from the Red Cross, like a Red Cross certified provider comes in and trains, or
I think they have to go to a class and get reimbursed to be to get trained. I think that's how it's worked.
you mean the lifeguards?
The
lifeguards.
And then the Red Cross, how is the Red Cross involved?
they
like-
are the body that oversees the
Certified
train. Yeah,
provider.
yeah.
They give the sort of,
And they do the certificates for the kids to if they've passed different levels in their swimming and that kind of thing. So it's sort of the organisation we work with for the swim program.
Okay, and do you know offhand what you require of lifeguards, and like, does everybody have to be certified in the same way, or are there different levels?
I think it's different levels. We have some that are instructor levels and some that are just lifeguard. So I know that's how they're paid differently. So I'm assuming, I've never done that, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming
There are
it's
different levels
it's-
of Red Cross,
yeah,
against
different-
Red Cross.
And
different-
requirements, if you're lifeguarding, the requirements are X.
right,
If you're teaching, it's probably X plus something else.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's my
And the pay
understanding.
scale goes up.
There was something else I was gonna ask. Oh, could you tell us about how any efforts in securing grants or sponsorships? I mean, I know Murphy Insurance has been really generous, and you've had sponsorships for the different events in the common, but like, can you just educate us about what's happened in that regard?
I mean, I know for the summer concerts, we've had, Murphy's Insurance, we had another grant that we got, to
Cultural
get
Council.
the,
We've
work
got it
with the
again this year, haven't we?
right, for the drumming group, the African drumming group. I know we've had other donations, I believe from some of the sports teams or no?
We've had small donations, so around some of the events, we reach out to all the local businesses to see if they want to come, to hand out candy and be part of the day. And if some of them don't feel that they are able to do that, they will put donations, and the donations go into the Notchka for the donations thing. We've had Bolton Orchards and
Right.
a few.
Parks and Recs gifts and donations.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a lot we have at the moment. I think that's an area we can definitely
Yeah, that's one of the
look
things that I
more
know.
into.
Yeah, I know Laura was looking into doing more of that now that Ally is here, so I think there's more we can do in that
Okay.
area.
And then my last question was, do you know the status of the request for a potential article at town meeting for like a revolving fund or a stabilization fund for Parks and Rec?
yes, so we went to talk, Ally and I went to talk to Don Lowe. I think Laura was keen on a stabilization fund. And I think the sense was that because it doesn't have to be renewed on an annual basis, it would be a better vehicle to try to accumulate fees over a long term for a larger project. Laura's quite passionate about the Derby Field situation, which of course was a septic field for a while. Now it isn't, but of course the leach field is still there, and it's very uneven. And I guess she, with her kids coming home all muddy, is finding that it's just a mess. And I guess that I think youth lacrosse has trained there at various times, but it's so rough that they can't play sort of a regulation game.
Sprained
They
ankles.
practice
Right.
there.
Laura was very keen on the idea of trying to do a 90-degree reorientation of Derby, so that it would go from roughly the parking lot hillside where the rocks are, extending into the forest. But I did a walk, and it's just absolutely impossible. There's so many wetlands in there,
So
And the new-
conservation wouldn't let you do that.
It wouldn't be
anyway.
possible. The Rivers Act has a 200-foot buffer zone now, and it's a flowing stream. The wetlands themselves, are right off the embankment. So I just don't think that's possible as an idea. So if anything would happen, it would really be a commitment to somehow resurface and redo Derby, not as a leach field, but as a true playing field. But, is there the stomach for it? I'm sure that'd be quite expensive. I talked to the conservation administrator, and she said as far as she was concerned, it would almost have to take the parking lot, the sort of hillside parking lot, which again, that's not gonna happen, we know that. Right, so I think Derby Field is what it is at the moment, and some monies would have to be put into it to really renovate it as a good playing field. The other alternative is, it is what it is, and we leave it alone, and we redirect our efforts somewhere else. And I don't know if the old sort of oxbow or horse pole ring by the community gardens is any better a solution. It has been wet down there historically, having been on the Conservation Commission. But I don't think the Derby situation is going to work, frankly. So that's where Laura's thoughts were, that money could be accumulated in a stabilization fund. Talking to Don Lowe, he said the downside is that you then have to have a town meeting to spend the money. And if the town isn't keen on renovating Derby Field, then the commission itself doesn't have much control over it.
Not even just a town meeting, it has to be.
Two-thirds, right. So suddenly a revolving account seems to make a little more sense for some of the fees that we might collect. It's just that we have to then put a renewal, but Don said, as just a matter of procedure, there'd be a consent article that would renew sort of all the revolving funds with normally, proper approvals, go into town meeting. And he said that would really just be a formality for the most part. So he urged us to really do a revolving account instead of a stabilization fund.
We have a question?
Yeah, please.
Derby Field, my kids played soccer and lacrosse there.
Yeah.
And after springtime, it is like falling on concrete.
Yeah,
It is.
It's very hard. It's also very, very active for small kids.
Yes.
It's become the overflow area, and I personally think it's gotta get done. I understand the obstacles. There was an estimate put together 5 or 6 years ago by DPW to renovate it. It never got off the ground, but
Do you recall the magnitude, Bob? $500,000?
I don't think it was that high.
Okay.
I wonder if there'd be a cost comparison between that and the field by the community garden, because that's a much bigger space. Because that's where my daughter played lacrosse, down there. And you'd have to sort out the parking, because like you said, getting in and out of there is a nightmare. You'd have to make it 2 lanes to be able to
I'm
come.
not familiar with that.
But it'd be curious cost projections of each of those,
Right.
which would be.
So,
Where to put the money.
my issue with revolving fund is, basically the whole point of having a revolving fund is you can spend the money in it without going to town meeting. Okay? So you're never going to accumulate enough money in a revolving fund to make any appreciable difference at Derby Field. I find it hard to believe that there aren't a lot of parents that wouldn't like to see their kids fall on something softer than the existing Derby Field. So I would encourage Parks and Recs to come up with an article, not for this year's town meeting, because that'd be rushing it, but please consider it for next year.
Fair enough. The idea, I think, of the revolving fund was to be able to accumulate some of the fees that we actually have some fees coming in right now.
Right.
Which is this triple play. And then other fees possibly for the use of town parks, which we're still trying to figure out. And that's a balance between.
Then you could
collecting
use
what
the
other
gift
towns
and
do.
donations account to
That's
put money.
All right.
Right,
So
but
that
right,
was the thought of it.
yeah, right now, those fees should all be going in the general fund, whereas the revolving fund allows you to spend them again.
That's correct, yes.
But again, with a revolving fund, since you're gonna be spending it, within 18 months when you get it, you're never gonna build up enough money to do.
Fees aren't enough, they only make like $5,000.
For field renovation, I agree with you.
So, I personally would encourage you to, over the next year, get together with DPW and come up with some kind of ideas for what to do with Derby.
Are you aware of what involvement the school would have in something like that? I mean, it's town property.
It's
The school
town property.
uses some of it. Ultimately, is the control with the town versus the school committee?
All of that is our property.
Okay.
And this is certainly by any, a capital project is $10,000 as far as the school district is concerned. This would far exceed that. The thing with the school is you'd have to consider the fact that Derby Field will get used every school day.
That's right.
Unlike all the other fields that we have, you have to take that into account.
Well, I think the part of the plan was if we were improving it, we would talk to the schools about having an area that was used every day by the students and another area that was reserved for only the PE teacher.
Yeah, you have to,
Yeah, that's
that's the
hard.
kind of stuff you need to work
Got a lot
out.
of kids out there
It
playing
drains
different
terribly
sports
too.
and
I've been down there and there's 2 feet of water in it.
volunteer and be out at recess, and that wouldn't, I would vote against it. It wouldn't be fair to the kids.
What's that?
Well, if you're going to keep half the field reserved and not being used by the students at recess, and, you know, they like to play and run and throw balls, it would get
Well,
really crowded.
Yeah, let them work it out. You know, I understand there's that, but that could be one alternative, but there may be others.
I remember they tried to grow grass there, and they had to keep all the kids off of it for so long, and as soon as you let the kids back out,
Right.
didn't matter where it was.
Right.
So the other option would be maybe look at the other fields.
I don't think that horse ring is big enough for when we've looked at a full-size soccer, which is similar to field hockey, which field hockey is one of the main sports that plays on Derby at the moment. I don't think it's big enough for them.
Okay.
But we would need to double check that 100%.
I have
Lacrosse?
2 ideas. One is I think, so the master planning steering committee is in the process of just starting to look at all this stuff. So I would say make sure you plug in.
I'm on it.
To get, exactly, right, to get all of these facility type things on their radar.
Agreed.
And I think in terms of an article.
Yes.
And then the other idea or really question was for you, Ninotchka, so which is for that Parks and Rec gifts and donations account, could that accept fee stuff?
No, it'd be donations. So for the fees, if they wanted to use fees for Parks and Rec stuff, the revolving fund is the way to go. If they're looking to build up funds to be used for something else, then the gifts and donations is what they could use.
Because I guess what I'm wondering, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm imagining, so let's say you have, at the end of the year, $4,000 in fees that you've collected, but you don't have something specific and you actually want to build it up to like $12,000 because you have a project that you as Parks and Rec want to be able to control it. It doesn't sound like they have a way to accumulate.
It's not really the right avenue. A revolving fund really is to support the programs and the fees that you, so it really should be used to pay for, you can pay lifeguard wages, you know, with your swim lesson money.
We could repair the lights.
Right. So it's not really meant to be built up. That's not what the purpose of a revolving fund is.
But what if so for example, if there are fees related to a court, right? And they know that the surfacing of, the resurfacing of the court is an expense that they couldn't pay in 1 year, but they want to save 3 years of those fees to do it.
Yeah.
It sounds like they have no way of doing that.
So they could, if it's supported for that, because that to me is repair and maintenance. That's not like a field, you know, I mean, we're talking massive amounts, you know, I think there has to be.
No, but what I'm saying is how could they save, like if they wanted to save $4,000 for 3 years to then do that in the 3rd year.
Like a new playground, for example.
Yeah.
Equipment.
They
Equipment.
can't do that, right?
They just need a big
Repair and
enough
maintenance
limit.
to me is different than a capital project.
Yeah, they just need a big enough limit on their revolving fund.
Right, like if you're resurfacing and repairing a court, I would say yes. If you are creating a brand new court, I would say no, because that's a capital expenditure.
Oh, but I see your point being that if the revolving fund limit is big enough, they can
Yes.
they can accumulate over a couple of years.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But then it's not overseen by the, town meeting, and when it gets big, it becomes liable to abuse.
Yep. Yep, I see.
Yeah, because you may not be here
Right.
when you've
Yeah, but I will be.
accumulated enough.
Right.
That's
But we
the
have,
problem.
that's what we've wrestled with.
Yeah,
Well, you don't have to
It's
touch a
round and round.
revolving fund, like,
No.
so you make one and you can just never take out of it until you need the money?
Like the
No,
antique.
you have to take out of it
You don't have.
every year?
No, you don't.
No,
Well,
so, okay.
Okay,
So you can save up for 3 or 4 years
Like the
without
cadet
touching it.
program has not spent, they didn't spend any money last year.
I think if you look at the magnitude, this is not going to be riches and riches. You know, we right now believe that we've got $3,000 coming in from something called Triple Play, right, which is a baseball outfit from, I think, out of town.
Yeah.
That
Like
it turned out that Bolton Youth Baseball was collecting the money, and Don Lowe has put a stop to that. So this would be a future income, if you will, all right, to Parks and Recreation, and the hope would be that that kind of money could go into this fund. Now, other casual park usage and so on, possibly, let's just throw out a number, 2,000 a year, so maybe we have $5,000 in fees. So over 2 or 3 years, we might have enough to do some fancy playground equipment upgrade,
Right.
something sort of simple like that,
Yeah,
not anything grand. But I think that's the magnitude we're talking about, not 20,000 a year or anything like
But are
that.
you saying like if we had 12,000 over 3 years, we couldn't use that for something like a playground? Is that what you were saying, or?
I think if you're repairing the playground equipment, you could, but a new playground, no.
Right.
So
I
how
understand.
would we ever get the money to do that?
The gifts and donations account.
what do we have for the wastewater treatment plant? Is that a stabilization fund?
yes.
And that requires 2/3 of a town meeting to withdraw money from?
Yeah.
Right.
Even for something for $15,000 or $20,000, if you're gonna do it over a few years, I think you get the votes at town meeting, but I would look at a stabilization fund.
It's risky though.
So we wouldn't, but then where we're struggling to get the 3,000 for our lights to be fixed,
Right.
if we had the revolving account, we
Oh, yeah,
could,
no,
we could
no,
do that kind of thing.
You
couldn't
could
we?
do both
Yeah.
of them.
Do both of them.
You could do both of them.
Yeah, but you
could have
never
a-
ever have enough
you
money
could
to do a
have-
I
field
know.
because you're using it for those other kinds of
Yeah.
In a
improvements.
different example, we could establish a stabilization fund for a fire truck.
Yeah.
A fire truck is $500,000. We don't want to borrow from it. We're going to put $150,000 a year in the stabilization fund until we get to 500,000. Then the town votes to take it out and buy a fire truck. We could do that. That's a big ticket item, but you could do that with smaller ticket items.
I think part of the concern with that was, having to wait for a town meeting to get approved, if there are things that come up mid-year that are expensive but
Sure.
need to be fixed.
Again, you could have a revolving fund and you could have a stabilization
It's
fund.
finding the money to put into both.
So
at the moment in
the
time.
stabilization
Right.
fund, what you want is, if you create a stabilization fund, you want to create it for a purpose,
Mhm.
not just in case.
Right.
This is a stabilization fund to build a basketball court. This is a stabilization fund to.
So you have to decide where you want to put the money. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
you can't,
Can you put donations
taken it
into a
too, I guess.
stabilization fund?
You could, but I don't think you want to.
No, that's a different,
I wouldn't.
because that's where I think either if we had an article at town meeting or the push to get donations to do a big ticket is where we're gonna get the money for that.
I think I would advocate for this year, if we could establish a revolving account, that would be a good way to start. Then if we see that something like Derby is worth renovating, then perhaps that could be either,
The two
to say,
together.
some town,
You know, that could
meeting
be, that could be
expenditure.
a combination of
or stabilization
donations
fund.
and a stabilization fund.
how, I mean, he used the word renovating, and that would be improvements, right?
Right.
I don't understand the difference of, you take Derby and you redo it, right? I know it's capital, but then again, they're renovating Derby, whether it becomes all
I think when you're
new.
talking the amount of money.
Right.
Becomes a capital.
I mean, it was a leach field. Do you have to dig that up and dispose of that and relay the surface?
Oh, no.
Because it was, it was graded specifically, as I understand it, with drainage parameters that met Board of Health requirements.
Right.
Now you're looking at I assume, level playing field, quite literally, all right? And so it may have to be built up in some way. And do you have to remove some of that old soil? Can you lay on top of it? So it really needs a lot of investigation at this point. I think it was a hope that Laura Roberts had to try and improve the situation, that it is in rough condition, it's not very usable, and it does get torn up. I know,
It is,
it just is what it is.
My kids have been out of the system for a
Yeah.
while.
Mine played field hockey on it
Horrible.
up until last year
Years
and it
ago.
was hideous.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think it's a big
Can I
big
just-
project.
One more question about the whole fund thing. So I think some of the scenarios we've played through in our meetings about whether it's stabilization or revolving is we're trying to collect money, something spontaneous happens, but that requires quite a bit of money. Say, the playground, it just doesn't work anymore, there's something big that
The
needs to be
slide-
replaced.
The
Falls
slide
over.
falls off, there's broken
Yeah,
pieces, we
right.
need to call in someone
And
to make it
that's
safe.
$8,000. If we haven't built that up in a revolving fund, but we also haven't started a stabilization fund because we didn't know that was gonna break, then what do we do?
You go to advisory for
Yeah,
reserve fund transfer.
Yeah, if there's something unexpected or unforeseen, then we have basically $100,000
Good to know.
to.
Always learning.
And come soon in the
She wants
process.
to be on next week's agenda.
But I think it's that,
I like
it's that randomness that the stabilization fund
Right,
doesn't
and
address.
that's where we were.
That's where it needs a specific purpose.
And that's where we
Revolving
find
looks
things
better.
coming up.
Yeah.
It's like something happens and we need to fix
Right.
it.
I would agree, stabilization is for some specific
Right.
purpose.
Right.
So revolving
So we need some-
until we
some
have
homework
a,
to do.
okay. And then we
on-
come
on the
see
big
you.
project.
Alright.
So I think in terms of next steps, we'll work with Don Lowe to find out what article, if any, you guys are putting forward
Okay.
in terms of a revolving fund account or whatever, but
Alright.
we'll, like, as we get toward the end of our budget cycle, we do a complete run through of all the articles on the warrant. So we'll give you a heads up if we know the day we're gonna consider it, and if you wanna come back, but I think otherwise we can probably just work with Don to
Don
figure out.
has assured us that there's a placeholder for something at the moment,
Okay,
right? And having discussed it with him just last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's geared toward the revolving account. He's really not in favor of stabilization fund when it was first raised, so that's his opinion, given to us.
thank you.
Sure.
And then, in terms of your budget, so, I would like to give you some more time to try to chip away at 3,000, because it's just,
Okay.
I mean, I know it seems crazy, but like, it's not, it's a pretty substantial amount as a
And
solution
and we don't
goes.
know if it's real.
Right.
Right.
And so what I would do is unless other people disagree, I would say that we hold off on approving this, but I think everybody else is comfortable with the budget as is, except for that 3,000,
Yeah.
right? So, we've gotta try to approve everything by really the end of February, first week of March, so if you're able to do a little bit of research.
Okay, no problem.
That'd be great.
That's 5,200
Ally's
temporary,
like, nice
correct?
to meet you.
I'm just going in my office now, I'm gonna do some emails.
This is why we're glad you were hired.
Oh, I know, right? Like, hey, by the way.
This would be us chasing down estimates for Annika.
You can have.
No, thanks. I'm busy.
But no, thank you so much for all the info.
Absolutely, good suggestions.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, appreciate it, everyone.
An electrician may come up with some other idea,
Yes.
who knows?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, our very own Peter Casello, fireman. He's an electrician, so many, many years of experience.
Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
All right. And last but not least, Conservation Commission. 171.
How are you all this evening?
Good, how are you?
Good, just had a sprint from the home building, so.
You had a.
We had a meeting this evening.
Right.
I thought we were gonna be late, so I was ready to apologize, but I'm glad we walked in at the right time.
It's all good.
So I understand you did receive the full packet this year with some of our reasoning as well, just to compare costs associated with Bower Springs in particular and Butternut. And then the Beaver Solutions annual maintenance that we do for flow devices. So I don't know if you have any questions just off the bat, if you want me to explain any of the changes that were made.
Yeah, why don't, I mean, I think wages are what they are, I think we know what that is, but if you wanna start at the purchase of services line.
Sure.
And walk us through, but before we do that, I just wanna make sure we're all working off of the same numbers. So our bottom line for Conservation Commission is $77,257.84.
Yep.
Okay.
We're all on the same page,
Alright, so
literally.
that's good. There we go.
Okay, so for the purchase of services, we're keeping that the same. And the reason why is because we are still doing the, I guess, findings on the repair work at Fifeshire. So we had given up that funding that was set aside specifically for Fifeshire in the article, and said we're still looking into that to do the research, hire a consultant. The work should be done this year regarding the consultants proposing what needs to be done. And in addition to that, acting on it would be the following year, which would include this cost, which is what that 7,000 is for. In addition, there was a change for the land maintenance line item, and that was after sitting through with the Conservation Commission at a meeting, looking at what work we do at Bower Springs and Butternut. In addition, we've had a severe influx of volunteer work and a wonderful volunteer.
Severe.
Yeah, severe in a good way. In a good way.
$5,000
Yes. And they've been very good at scheduling work parties and doing the work either themselves with my help or collecting some great community members that are helping participate in that. So the commission felt that even if we weren't to get that volunteer help, we could still reduce that number and just focus on the major mowing and major treatment areas. So that's why that number was reduced. And that's, again, just to reiterate, the Jim Henderson for Bowers and Butternut.
Yeah.
And then the training stayed the same, and again, that's for funding the MECC fundamentals training courses for the commission members. The reason why we're not increasing it is because obviously they've been chipping away at that, but the reason why we're not lowering it is because of the cost of the conference each year changes slightly and increases slightly. The vernal, any questions on that? No. The vernal pool study, we did reach out to Minuteman, and they are doing the vernal pool study this year.
And just to be clear, you're
Yes.
talking Minuteman High School.
Correct.
Which is, so can you say a little bit more about that team? 'Cause that
Sure.
sounds really cool.
So we reached out to the teachers I reached out to the teachers at Minuteman High School after the reminder from this board, and had suggested that in the past we had done the vernal pool study and worked with them on certifying some vernal pools in town. And it is the environmental technical program, so they'll be doing that work this spring. We'd hope to get them for next spring as well, but there's no guarantee, so that's why we just want to leave that funding for that purpose. And in addition, to submit any documentation or print any documentation that they need, mileage, that's what that is for.
It's cool.
Yes, I'm very excited. We have 2 or 3 vernal pools on a conservation property, 2 over on South Bolton Road, and then 1 that we're still going to be, or no, excuse me, we did confirm the 1. So all of them are authorized permission for both myself and the students to go out and certify the vernal pools on, like I said, private and public land. So a lot of people, when we are suggesting to them that this is an opportunity from the residents' perspective, they're very for it as well, which is encouraging.
Yeah. Well, thank
Any
you.
other questions on
Thank you
that?
for doing that.
Okay. The next item is advertising. So for legal notices, typically if it's a town project, we advertise for it. So DPW, we had fire propose a fire pond, so we advertised for that as well. And then for supplies, that stayed the same. That's for the supplies of the office, and in addition, or inclusive of the ink and printing material as well. And then in-state travel, that is staying the same. This year, I'm going to be cutting it very close in terms of site visits and going to the conservation properties to be doing work on the conservation properties, but I think that's a reasonable amount. And then the dues, are staying the same, and that's included in your packets, or it should be the MACC membership, the MSNCP, so organizations that we collaborate with, and also provide grant opportunities and things like that, and training opportunities. Our land capital improvements. Yep. So that's at $1,000, and that is the Beaver Solutions.
Yeah.
So that's the annual maintenance plan, and last year we had the repair of a flow device. We were recently told we need another flow device repaired within the next year or two, so that's why that's staying at $1,000. The equipment, we also reduced from last year's budget because we needed the brush hog repaired. We ended up getting that done this year, so we won't need to do it next year. In addition to that, the equipment that we're repairing is regular tune-up work, chainsaw work, and then equipment for the trails as well in terms of repairing bridges and things.
This is a super basic question.
Go ahead.
But where, the town owns this equipment?
Yes.
Where does it sit?
In my container back there.
Okay.
That green ugly container
That's
that people
all-
complain about
That's what the
sometimes.
brush hog is?
Yeah, no, the brush hog is in the old fire station
Okay.
or behind DPW when we're using it.
Okay.
So it moves between, but we have a trailer for it as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna try and fit it back in the container, but we'll see. So that's focused on that equipment, and then the conservation fund was the other item that we changed. And we've been looking for ways to add more funding to it, and because we had reduced our budget, we felt that it was still reduced enough that it would be reasonable to request an increase to $500 instead of the $100 contribution.
How much have you used out of that?
Well, we have not used, we used $3,900 when we had applied for, or had the property of Camp Virginia appraised, and we were working on that project. We have reimbursed $3,000 of that, so it went back into the conservation fund. This year, though, that's a great question that you asked. We are looking to acquire property, so we are spending, we're definitively spending, again, $3,900 for an appraisal of the Taggart property, which we have a holding article.
The piece on 4 Bush Mill Road?
Correct, yes.
Which piece is that?
It's off of 4 Bush Mill Road, basically across from the transfer station. It had a for sale sign out. They've taken it down because of the conversations we've been starting, or that we've been having. And that we will also apply for a grant for reimbursement. But if the article is to move through and go forward to town meeting, at that time, we would be expecting to use the conservation fund towards that
And how much is in that fund?
3,000.
32,000.
32,000.
I was about to say.
I was gonna say,
it's
it's
31, a whole lot
Yeah,
more, so
yeah.
I don't see that's where I get, why increase it when you have 32,000 and you've only used and almost reimbursed? I mean,
We can only use it for land acquisition projects.
right, I understand that.
So, and in addition to that, we're asking for the increase because the commission feels strongly that we need to fund it, so when these projects come up, whether it's a conservation restriction, whether it's an acquisition project, or even an appraisal, that we can work diligently to carry that out on behalf of the town. But also particularly this year, I think the increase, I certainly could defend easily because we're expecting to use all or the majority of that conservation fund, so we'll be back down to zero. And we'll be starting at $500.
You're gonna, well, wait, I thought,
Because the acquisition we're proposing
Oh, you're saying if
would
the,
be contributing
If
to
the
it.
article goes through.
Correct.
Yes.
So the article for the Taggart acquisition, not necessarily this.
so can you briefly get us up to speed on that article? I mean, I know we have a placeholder in our budget for that, but what's
Mhm.
the,
So right now, when the appraisal is being done, we're going out on site on February 11th. and she'll continue the appraisal process. And we requested that it be done after speaking with Dawn prior to March 23rd, so that it can be, I think it's before your last meeting. And then we can get an exact number in terms of what we would be acquiring the property
I
for.
think that might be cutting it close, but
I did speak with
Dawn.
Dawn.
Yeah.
But so that's where it stands, and we have 3 grants that would be looking to apply to seek reimbursement. And if we were to receive all of those grants, we would be fully reimbursed by 2021. So spring of 2021, excuse
So
me.
the town doesn't have to approve purchase of land?
They have to approve the appropriation of funds for the upfront cost of the land, even if they're being reimbursed from the grants.
So yeah, the town meeting would definitely have
It's an
to.
article.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So it'd be a spending article, to my understanding.
Yeah, you'd have to do the whole number.
Just in case.
So that's why we're waiting for the appraisal question.
This is a mechanism question. How are these funds set aside? Is this a stabilization fund? This conservation fund?
It's mandated by the state.
No, it's just a,
When they established the conservation commissions, the state mandated that conservation commissions have a, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Called the conservation.
It's called a
fund.
conservation fund, and it
Yeah.
can only be used for the acquisition of
Yep.
land.
Okay,
Right.
so, okay. That's what I was wondering.
so it's its own
Why we
special.
couldn't apply this
Yeah.
to the Parks and Rec, but you
No.
answered it's a special state law.
Yeah.
Okay,
It says it right in Mass General Law,
okay.
which we spoke about at our lovely presentation.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think I just get hung up on there's no defibrillator at the senior center and, you chip away at some of these things and you have a defibrillator.
So the
That's my-
reasoning between, why specifically this year, not that in other years I wouldn't feel so strongly to defend this, aside from it being my job to do so. But because we have chipped away at the budget, trying to reduce our general budget that we requested. We have reduced it from last year, understandably not a substantial amount, but I think it's a good chunk to be general about it. And I think that $500 is what the commission was considering when they're chipping away at that budget, saying, you know what, we're going to back up on the aggressive approach we're taking on maintaining one of our most popular used properties so that we can contribute to the conservation fund in knowing that we're going to be spending it down to nothing so that we're prepared for the next thing that's coming in terms of whether it's a conservation restriction, whether it's a baseline report someone needs to do, whether it's an assessment we need to hire for the acquisition of land.
False about it. It's somewhat of a generational thing too. When the Wetlands Protection Act set it up, it was one generation saving for the next type thing. And for years, the town was usually $5,000 a year, if I'm correct. They were doing $5,000 a year every single year. And then, you get to hard times, market there were problems, it went down to nothing. But we spent the money that people in this town put away a little bit every year. We spent on the Weathersby property, which was a huge addition to Bowers Springs. It's come in really handy. And when things like the Taggart property come up, before the town could even move on it, we could move and say, yes, we're interested, we have money, let's get this started, right? So our generation really hasn't done, for years it was zeroed out, and then it was $100 just to say we did something. Which is fine, we understand, I'm not happy with my taxes to begin with, everybody loves to complain about them, and rightfully so. But we just thought it was time we started kind of kicking in again for our generation. This is not the toughest of time for markets. We've had it on zero to nothing forever, that maybe we could just kick it up to $500 and just start putting it away. So as, 10 years from now, if something comes up, we know a lot of farmers in town that are making tough decisions in the next 5-10 years, that there's something there, that we've left something for whoever's running the commission then to actually move on these projects. And we've been happy to leave it at nothing for the last 5 years. Every year they ask us to zero it. And now I think we happily did that, and now we want to move it up again. We actually want to contribute. We didn't think 500 was a lot. to
No,
ask.
I get that, and I think of some things people have said at town meeting, and it's always, well, there's always land, there's,
Hmm.
when do you say, I don't need any more land, I've gotta take care of all this land, it costs me money to take care of this land, why do I need this piece of land? Sometimes, I have to, it's,
I hear the arguments
Still,
too. I mean, we can
it's
talk
like-
about open space, we can
I
talk
love-
about
look,
climate change.
I would rather
It's-
every house have to have 3 acres of land on it.
Right, right.
Personally, but then when I have to go through all of this sometimes,
Believe me,
but
I
I
know.
get it, I'm not against it.
So I wanna just separate out two issues. One is, our voting on this, which I think we're probably prepared to do tonight, but I wanted to follow up on the article. So do you anticipate that our town administrator will be the one who comes in and presents all of your data when he goes through the rest of the capital requests, or are you gonna be coming back to?
I can come back and I can speak with him to confirm that, but I've spoken with him as well, and he's seen the grant breakdown as well, in terms of what our plan is moving forward, in terms of once we get the appraisal back, and then work on a number, if it still sounds like something that's feasible, that we wanna bring to town meeting, then at that time, we'll even go through the grants again and break down what the maximum awards are, et cetera.
And
But
is-
we have already started that process.
Is the Board of Selectmen generally aware of the plan for the property?
Yes. And so we went before the Board of Selectmen because we wanted to be very transparent about the process. We went before Concom, obviously, during the public meeting process, and the Board of Selectmen authorized me to start moving forward with this process along with the Conservation Commission. And the two things that we had spoken about regarding the plan, because in the past, in 2005, when this property was inquired about to be purchased, the fallback was, well, what are you gonna do with it? And everyone said, I don't know, we just wanna take it before someone develops. To be general, that wasn't the exact quote. But that was some of the commentary and feedback that I had received that was an issue in 2005. So going into this, one of the grants we would be applying for, well, two of them, one would be the land grant, the next would be a federal community forest grant. It's currently in forestry, so under chapter 61, meaning it's in forestry practice, so it suits that federal grant. Both of those grants require it to be open space, no structures. What we'll hopefully get from the appraisal is, can there even be anything built on it? And if so, where would that be? There is some upland area there, but it is surrounded by resource area at the entrance and the frontage, so it would need some substantial engineering to get into the property. So there's two options. The first is, don't do anything, leave it as forestry, and have it be a community forest, and that's where those grants come in. The grants still apply to the sections of the property if we talked about if there was a need to subdivide 1 or 2 parcels to offset the cost. Is that possible? We won't know until after the appraisal, but at the same time, knowing that that's something that was talked about as well. But we have no engineered drawings in terms of a plan.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that 2005, it was off the table because people didn't want it, didn't want it to be developed, a developer come in and.
Well, it was on the table.
On the
Yeah.
table for
Yes.
that.
Yes.
But nothing happened, I don't know why, but.
No, and I don't know the exact, I wasn't here obviously for that
But
time.
that was the thing though, is that we wanna grab it so it can't be developed, right? And there's only so much of it that can be developed anyway, which is only those 2 lots at the top. So it's like,
We don't know. So, but
you're
for,
thinking maybe.
that's what we're waiting for the appraisal on. Even if it's not able to be developed though, we would keep it as open space and as a community forest, meaning we can still go in and harvest timber, we can still go and use it as education or research purposes, or even just as a conservation property. But
Even under 61?
yes, so chapter 61 is forestry, so it would be continuing that use, and that use is it runs parallel with what the grants are expecting you to do with the property. The reason why I brought up the 2 lots is just stating that that was discussed in terms of potentially offsetting costs if it's feasible. In addition to that, we would have to establish that prior to the land grant, so we'd have to do some land surveying in terms of where those would be, cutting those out because those would not be able to be included within the land grant portion of that application to be reimbursed for the total cost.
Did you still have a question?
Well, I recall from way back when I first came into town, there was discussion of getting some of that property as a land bank in case the town needed space to build another town hall or something like that. It was some very, I think the portion of the property that's been, that was most suitable for that now has houses on it. But that was part of the discussion many years ago was, you know, if they could find the owners, which they had trouble doing back then, they should, we should pursue creating basically a land bank for municipal. This is pure conservation that we're talking about here. I'm sort of changing topics here, but I'd like to point out that this is not a land purchase being driven by any special interest group in town. This is originating from the Conservation Commission. I don't remember the last time the Conservation Commission originated the purchase of land like that, so I think it's been a long time, and I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, I do too. As far as the developable, whatever the word is, part of that, who would develop it? Would the Conservation Trust?
So
I mean,
it would be
commissions?
similar if it was able, if we found after the appraisal and there was a way to enter into the property in terms of an access road, which I still come into question about because of the resource areas at that frontage. It would be similar to Moen at Vaughan Hills. So when that property was purchased, there were 2 lots carved out and sold off to be developed. And then the town received the purchase from it, I mean, the funding from it.
Right.
But this property owner, and Bob, thank you for bringing that up, is willing and feels strongly about it going to a town use. So I think they would feel better if it were a land bank situation, if it was developable versus selling it off. I think that's what the property owner, the current property owner, feels very strongly about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, that was very helpful.
That was helpful.
It sounds like you guys have some like information and homework you're doing on this specific article. The one thing I guess I would add for you to think about is whether there are any timing issues that are requiring it to be considered this year versus, because the reason, again, like we just were talking to Parks and Rec about the master planning process.
Yep.
It seems like the type of bigger picture project that if you can wait on it and have it be part of a comprehensive, like this is why it makes sense, you might get further at town meeting with that sort of a thing, but I don't know if you can wait until the master planning process is done.
So we have that information as well from the open space and recreation plan already. So we do have, and I apologize, I didn't put it in that format for tonight, and I should have, but we do have that bigger picture, and we actually have that information from 2005, and it's only more so become important over the past few years that have passed since 2005. In addition to that, we're part of the Nashua River Watershed Association Stewardship Council for the Wild and Scenic River that we were designated, so we're a federally designated Wild and Scenic River at this point, which again gives us better opportunity to apply for these grants, which doesn't, back to your comment, mean it needs to happen this year. They're also looking at land acquisition projects and trying to gather 1,000 acres along the Nashua watershed. So there are other things in motion where we do need to act on it this year, or it would be mindful to do it because of those potential other opportunities and partnerships. In addition to that, the property owner doesn't have it on the market currently because of these conversations that we've started, and she has also asked what the timeline is. She's been relatively flexible with that, but I don't know, putting it off a year, what that would do. So that's why we're thinking this is a good time to submit it.
So we have a placeholder of 500,000 in the budget.
Yes.
Is that close?
Close, yes.
Like
And
too
after,
low?
so right now, I spoke to her, and what I asked her, without saying exact numbers, I said, what are you thinking? Because I know we can't speak numbers yet. And she basically said half of what they had. So that brings us to about 650 at a cap. But knowing the frontage has resource areas at the front, it may not actually even be able to be developed. It's currently in forestry, someone would have to pay back taxes. There are a lot of things that are in our court. So when we get the appraised value from the town's appraiser, we're hoping to work on those numbers to bring it down a little bit more.
The quicker you get those numbers,
Exactly.
just because, yeah, I mean, that could change everything in our whole budget cycle, you know?
Yeah, and that's, again, the other understanding of having it as a holding right now, because we also are well aware that we're not gonna spend 1.5 million,
No.
and that's why we had the
But if,
conversation
I would
of.
assume we'd have to borrow, say if it was
Yes.
even 650, I would have to at least get the debt service in the budget correctly,
Yeah,
just so we're.
Yeah, and it would be reduced, again, because we'd be using the conservation
Right.
fund, and then the grants as well.
But
And
we'd
then
have
have
to
that.
borrow initially.
Exactly, yep. So it would be reduced by 31 something, at least, which isn't a lot.
Not a lot,
But
but,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay. All right, so that was great information. Let's vote on 171
I move that we approve it as submitted.
for a total of 77,257.84.
Second.
All right, and is that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you, great information. And, yeah, we'll stay tuned on your article.
For when either Dawn and myself, or just Dawn or just myself bring forward the article, would you prefer to see that summary of the landscape scale that you were talking about?
Oh, you mean like the bigger picture
Yes.
and where it fits into the, yeah, we'll talk about, like, I'll talk with either you or Dawn before we have that meeting and we can figure out what makes sense.
Okay.
So, all right.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Yeah, good
Thank
to
you.
see you. Thanks, Brian.
No, thanks, guys.
All right, so we're gonna hold off and do 2 sets of minutes next week on February 11th. You will not be here, you don't think? Yeah, anyway. Anything else that we need to discuss?
I do, I have something, I won't be here next week. And I think you said library's coming in? Are you positive it's library?
Jenny confirmed today it is.
Okay.
Wanted to be here. I just wanted, put this in your thoughts. I really am upset about no defibrillator. It really bothers me. I've seen where one wasn't in a believe it or not, a drugstore, and the man lived, but yet it would have helped to have the defibrillator. And I know that the library is getting 1.5% more percentage towards their book budget than is required by our population. And I was upset when, what department was it that came in that bought books?
Agriculture.
Agriculture. Had bought his own books. That was $200, but then again, there was the Historical Society bought books, and, you know, if we're paying all this money for more than we have to, I don't understand why the library can't buy all the books this town needs, or maybe give up a little bit so we could buy a dang defibrillator. I don't know. I don't know if we should reduce it by 0.5%. So that, I mean, that's like, what, $7,000 more than we have to spend? That's what a percentage and a half comes to?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers off the top of
Something
my
like
head.
6,700 or something, I had it written down. So I'm just asking, if you think about trying to get them to buy the books the town needs, because for one, I'd like to know how much money the town spends in books and library supplies.
Yeah.
And I think it's a poor use of someone's budget to buy books. That money could have been put into the Council on Aging towards a defibrillator. That's just my thoughts. So, and I won't be here, so I won't be able to bring it up. If somebody, feels strong about it or strongly enough, I would hope that you'd entertain talking to the library about it.
Yeah,
And who is the liaison for the library?
We don't have like.
for right now, this year, we don't have them, but feel free to actually reach out to Kelly before you go if you wanna talk about it with her.
I mean,
But here's the thing, I don't wanna get into a discussion right now about the library, cause they're not on the agenda, I don't want us to discuss it.
no, we shouldn't, you're right.
But I appreciate that you're putting this, like, basically, since you're not gonna be here next week, I'm glad you brought it up so we can
Yeah.
ask about it, and you should feel free to reach out to. And let me know, or,
And reach out I would suggest you reach out to the other groups that are buying books on their own.
Right.
Because it may be a possibility that something could be worked out.
But that's what I was hoping. In the least.
It wasn't clear, and I just asked, that while the Council on Aging may not have a AED, I don't know that the facility itself doesn't have one, considering
It's a nursing home.
Considering it's populated
I mean, it's-
entirely by seniors, I would
Well, you would
expect
think.
there'd be one in the building, whether that's.
Right.
That's,
yeah,
Yeah.
it may even be required, I don't know.
Good thing to ask.
yeah, like, there might
I'm
be
sure
something
they
in the
have.
building that's not exclusively ours,
Sure.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I
They're
can see
really,
there might be a
and-
value to having one on hand during a, trip somewhere, what have you, when you're not in the building.
Okay. And you know what, I'll follow up with Penny and Lisa about that.
You should.
All right, is there a
Thank
motion to adjourn? Thank you.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, thank you.
Hey, Bob. How many selectmen are there?
3, I think.
I've only seen 2. You sure?